Have you ever had the feeling that the days, months, years are going by faster and faster? When we were kids, summer vacation seemed to last forever. Now we blink and it's December again. Why is that? Does time really speed up? Or is it just an illusion? In our minds, this is one of the greatest mysteries of our perception, the feeling that time compresses as we get older. Philosophy, psychology, and even neuroscience have explanations for this, and they could completely change the way you look at life. In today's video, we're going to dive into the philosophy of time and understand what's happening to our perception. More than that, we're going to discover how we can slow down time and live more fully. So, before we go any further, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. Do you feel that time is passing too quickly? Have you ever noticed how, when you were a child, a single day seemed to last forever? Do you remember school vacations that never seemed to end? Christmas took so long to arrive that the wait was almost torturous. But as we get older, the years start to fly by. What is happening to our perception of time? Is it really speeding up, or is it just a trick of the mind? This phenomenon is known as the time paradox. When we are young, we feel that time passes slowly, but as we get older, it seems to speed up. This sensation is not just subjective, but has profound explanations in psychology, neuroscience, and even philosophy. The most popular explanation for this is the theory of the proportion of time lived. Imagine a 5-year-old child. For them, a single year represents 20% of their entire existence. That's a huge fraction of their life. Now think of someone aged 50. For them, 1 year is only 2% of their life experience. This shortening of the relative perception of time means that, with each passing year, we have the impression that the years are getting shorter. But that's not the only reason. There is also a crucial psychological factor. The way our brain processes time depends directly on our experiences and the novelty they bring. When we're children, everything is new. We learn new words, explore unfamiliar environments, experience intense emotions for the first time. This excess of new stimuli causes the brain to record many more memories and details, expanding our perception of time. Now think about adult life. Routine takes over. Days become predictable. We do the same things, see the same people, follow the same paths. Our brain goes into automatic mode and stops registering so many details. The result? We have the impression that time flies because we simply aren't creating as many new memories. Does this mean that the more monotonous our lives are, the faster time will pass? That's right. But is there a way to combat this acceleration of time? To answer this question, we need to understand how our brains perceive time biologically. If time seems to go faster with age, then something inside us must be changing. This change happens in the brain, which interprets and organizes the passage of time in surprising ways. But how does it work? Our brain doesn't measure time like a clock. Instead, it relies on an internal mechanism based on memories and stimuli. Time, in fact, is not something absolute for the human mind. It expands or contracts depending on how we process experiences. Research shows that the perception of time is linked to the functioning of the prefrontal cortex and the basal ganglia, regions responsible for processing events and the notion of temporal sequence. When we are exposed to new and challenging situations, these areas work harder, storing more information. This makes the experience seem to last longer. Now, what happens when life becomes predictable? When we follow the same routes, work on the same tasks, and always meet the same people, the brain reduces effort. It already knows the scenario and doesn't need to record so many details. This explains why a whole year of routine can seem to pass in the blink of an eye, while a month full of travel, learning, and new experiences can seem much longer. The phenomenon known as the temporal density hypothesis reinforces this idea. According to this theory, when we store many new memories, the brain perceives that period as longer. On the other hand, when few memories are recorded, time seems to have evaporated, and that can be a problem. If we're not attentive, we run the risk of spending years in a state of autopilot, just watching time slip through our fingers without really living it. The way we structure our days has a direct impact on our perception of time. The more predictable our routine, the faster the years seem to pass. Imagine two scenarios. In the first, you spend a week traveling to an unknown country, exploring new places, tasting different foods, and living unique experiences. In the second, you spend the same week following your usual routine, waking up at the same time, walking the same route to work, doing the same tasks, and returning home at the end of the day. When these weeks are over, which one seemed the longest? The answer is almost always the same. The travel week seemed much longer. This is because our brains perceive time based on the amount of new information processed. The more new information, the more memory we create, and the longer the experience seems to have been. Now look at your life over the last few years. How many really new moments can you remember? If everything seems to have passed too quickly, it's likely that your routine has been excessively predictable. Neuroscience explains this through the temporal compression effect. When we live through repetitive experiences, our brain doesn't need to spend energy recording details because it already knows them. With less information being stored, time shrinks in our perception, and months and years seem to dissolve quickly. The French philosopher Henri Bergson already talked about this when he said that psychological time, the time we feel, is not the same as clock time. It is not linear, but elastic. It expands in the face of novelty and contracts in the face of routine. This means that it's not time that speeds up, but the way we're living. If the days seem too short, perhaps it's time to incorporate more new experiences into your routine. Small changes such as learning something different, changing your commute to work, or meeting new people can give your brain the impression that time is passing in a richer and more meaningful way. But it's not just novelty that influences our perception of time. There is an even more powerful factor: the way we pay attention and record our experiences in our memory. The way we perceive time depends not only on what we do, but also on how we pay attention to what we are experiencing. Our brain doesn't record every second of our existence. It selects highlights and discards the rest. This means that time can seem longer or shorter, depending on the quality of our memory. Try to remember what you did last Monday. If it was an ordinary, repetitive day, your memory will probably be vague, almost as if the day hadn't even existed. Now try to remember a special day, such as a trip or an important celebration. You'll remember details, colors, sensations. That day will seem much longer and more real. Neuroscience calls this the deep processing hypothesis. The more attention we pay to an experience, the more details we store, and the longer that experience seems to be in our memory. When we're distracted or on autopilot, memory becomes superficial, and time seems to evaporate. Another important factor is the first-time effect. The first time we ride a bike, travel to an unknown place, or start a new job, everything seems intense and memorable. This is because new experiences activate areas of the brain linked to emotion and learning, making that moment more vividly etched. Now think about your routine. How many moments really grab your attention on a daily basis? If we spend most of our time distracted, checking social media, doing tasks mechanically, living automatically, we create fewer and fewer meaningful memories. The result? The feeling that the years are passing more and more quickly. Mindfulness has been studied as an effective way of slowing down the perception of time. By concentrating on the present, absorbing the details around us, we register more information and make experiences richer. Small changes, such as turning off your cell phone during meals, taking a leisurely walk to observe your surroundings, or simply taking a few minutes to breathe and feel the moment, can have a surprising effect. If time seems to be slipping out of your hands, Perhaps it's not time that's speeding up, but your attention that's dissipating. Since ancient times, philosophers have tried to understand the nature of time. Is it something absolute or just an illusion of our mind? Two great minds brought profound reflections on this question: Saint Augustine and Henri Bergson. Augustine, in the 4th century, already realized that time is not something fixed. In his work Confessions, he wrote that if no one asked him what time was, he knew, but when he tried to explain it, he couldn't anymore. For him, time didn't exist as an objective reality. The past was just memory, the future was expectation, and the present was the only real thing. This ties in with what we've seen so far. Our perception of time depends on how we experience and record it. Centuries later, Henri Bergson brought another perspective. For him, time was not just a mechanical sequence of seconds and minutes, as measured by clocks, but something fluid, which expands or compresses according to our experience. When we experience intense moments full of meaning, time seems longer. When we fall into monotony, it simply slips away. This idea explains why our childhood seems rich and long, while adult life can pass in the blink of an eye when we get stuck in a rut. If the time that really matters is the time we live and feel, then the question is not just about it speeding up, but about how we are occupying our days. The problem is perhaps not time itself, but the way we pass through it, often without really being present. Now I want to know, do you agree with Augustine's view or Bergson's? Is time real or just an illusion? Leave your answer in the comments. And if the video makes sense to you, please like it so that more people can think about it. If time seems to be speeding up, it's not just because of routine or the way the brain stores memories. Our emotions also play a fundamental role in how we perceive time. The emotional state we are in directly influences our experience of the passing days, months, and years. Anxiety, for example, can completely distort our perception of time. When we are anxious or under stress, our mind enters a state of hyperactivity, and every second seems to drag by. This is because the brain is constantly on alert, recording every detail and anticipating possible threats. In these moments, time seems to stretch out, making the wait for something even more agonizing. On the other hand, depression can have the opposite effect. Depressed people often describe the feeling that days are passing without meaning, as if life were in a state of fog. This is because the brain, when it enters a state of low motivational activity, reduces the processing of new memories. As a result, weeks or even months can become an indistinct blur, contributing to the impression that time is slipping away without anything really happening. Nostalgia also alters our perception of time. Happy moments from the past seem much more vivid than ordinary periods of adult life. This is because nostalgia activates the limbic system, the region of the brain responsible for emotions and memory. This is why music, smells, and places can trigger extremely detailed memories, transporting us to a time that seems more real than the present. This sensation reinforces the idea that the past was better or slower, when in fact what has changed is the way we record our experiences. Another important emotional factor is the way we view the future. When we are children or young people, the future seems full of possibilities. There's always something new ahead. School, a first job, new relationships. This creates a sense of expectation that expands our perception of time. However, as we get older and our responsibilities increase, we start to live more on automatic, failing to see big changes ahead. Without new expectations, time contracts and the years seem to disappear quickly. The way we live each moment emotionally can mean the difference between feeling that we are making good use of time or having the sensation that it is slipping out of our hands. If we spend our days worrying about the future or stuck in the past, we're not really living in the present. And it is in the present that time becomes more real. If the perception of time is something subjective, shaped by our routine, emotions, and memories, This means that we can intentionally influence.
The good news is that there are ways to slow down this feeling that the years are slipping away unchecked. Small changes in everyday life can make time more tangible and meaningful, preventing it from slipping away unnoticed. One of the most effective methods for slowing down time is to seek novelty and variety in your routine. The brain registers more information when we are faced with something new.
This explains why trips and remarkable experiences seem to last longer than repetitive periods. The key is not necessarily radical changes, but small variations in everyday life. Learning something different, trying out a new route to work, changing habits and getting out of your comfort zone. Another powerful strategy is to practice mindfulness, being truly present in each moment. Absorbing the details of what is happening around you makes the brain register the experience in a richer way.
We often spend our days on autopilot without really noticing what we're doing. Training the mind to focus on the now helps to expand the perception of time. Something as simple as turning off your cell phone while eating or paying more attention to your breathing while walking can have noticeable effects. Creating meaningful memories is also essential. Life seems longer when we look back and can remember special moments.
To do this, it's important to invest in experiences that mark the passage of time. Having a hobby, recording events in a diary, taking photos, and even creating rituals that differentiate one period from another help to give weight to memories. The problem with adult life is that every day starts to look the same. But intentionally creating memories prevents this compression of time. Another important aspect is managing time consciously.
Many of us feel that the years are flying by because we are constantly busy, but without really living what we are doing. The feeling of lack of time comes not from the amount of things we do, but from the way we deal with them. Stopping filling every free moment with empty distractions and reserving space for meaningful activities can be a game changer. If psychological time is elastic, then it can be adjusted by the way we choose to live it.
Rushing to do more doesn't make time richer, it just makes it shorter. The key to slowing down life is not to do less, but to feel more. If there's one thing this video has shown us, it's that time doesn't speed up, but our perception of it does. The feeling that the years are flying by is not a physical phenomenon, but a psychological. Time shrinks when life becomes predictable and expands when we are attentive and open to the new. In childhood, everything seemed bigger because we were constantly immersed in new things and every experience was a discovery. In adulthood, routines become rigid. Days pass without a trace in the memory, and before you know it, time seems to have slipped away. But this is not inevitable. Time doesn't have to be an enemy. It can be an ally, as long as we know how to live it consciously. The philosophies of Augustine and Bergson taught us that time is not just a succession of minutes and hours. It is above all a construction of our consciousness. If we let the days pass without presence or meaning, our perception of time will become shorter and shorter. But if we commit ourselves to living more consciously, creating memories, and opening ourselves up to the unexpected, we can regain the feeling that we are really living and not just going through life. The question that remains is, how have you been living your days? Has your routine made the years seem shorter or longer? If there's one thing this video has shown us, it's that time doesn't speed up, but our perception of it does. The feeling that the years are flying by is not a physical phenomenon, but a psychological one. Time shrinks when life becomes predictable and expands when we are attentive and open to the new. In childhood, everything seemed bigger because we were constantly immersed in new things and every experience was a discovery. In adulthood, routines become rigid. Days pass without a trace in the memory, and before you know it, time seems to have slipped away. But this is not inevitable. Time doesn't have to be an enemy. It can be an ally, as long as we know how to live it consciously. The philosophies of Augustine and Bergson taught us that time is not just a succession of minutes and hours.
It is, above all, a construction of our consciousness. If we let the days pass without presence or meaning, our perception of time will become shorter and shorter. But if we commit ourselves to living more consciously, creating memories, and opening ourselves up to the unexpected, we can regain the feeling that we are really living and not just going through life. Think about everything we've said here. Time is not something we can control, but we can change the way we experience it.
Small changes in routine, more attention to the present, and the search for new experiences can make a huge difference to the way we perceive the days, months, and years. If this video has given you a new perspective, please leave a like. This helps the channel grow and reach more people who also feel stuck in this race against time. Share this content with someone who needs to hear it today. And now tell me in the comments, what do you want to change in your life to make time more meaningful?